What's up, everybody? Marcus Grant, Dylan Milliner here, and we are pairing up with our friends at fantasyomatic to bring you the latest and greatest when it comes to advanced stats and algorithms. Algorithm, that's the key word. That is the word of the day.
Fancy word for meaning stats and data all just jumbled together. The fantasyomatic algorithm, for you math nerds at home, is a collection of a bunch of data all spun together in a blender. It's the previous week's player ranking added with the opponent rating of who that player is playing, plus the home and away data added to the field surface they're playing on. Finally, the situation based on the season, where they are in the season they're playing. All this data gets put into the algorithm and out spits a couple of numbers. One, the player ranking that you can count on that week of that fantasy player, plus the matchup-based difficulty of how strong that matchup is for your player. And those four stats can be broken down into four categories: worst matchup, bad matchup, better matchup, and best matchup.
See, I always wonder what all those extra buttons on my scientific calculator were for. Now I know. So let's put this to some real-world tests to talk about some actual players, starting with Odell Beckham Jr., who obviously is going to be a very buzzworthy guy when you get to drafts. I feel like he's going to be really overdrafted this year, but apparently, you look at what happened last year, and according to the algorithm, maybe I'm, kind of talking nonsense right now.
Well, he finished the season strong, and he's everyone's preseason darling. This is his schedule from last year. He started in Week 5 because he had that hamstring injury, and you can see that he's got a couple of bad and worse matchups there. But in the 6 bad or worst matchups he faced last year, he scored at least 9 points every time. So even though there's a bad matchup, he's performing almost double digits, and you see he finished the season strong against 2 of the best matchups he had in your fantasy playoffs, 30 and 26 points respectively. That's why he's a fantasy darling. So the algorithm actually spit out that he was the number 1 receiver in based on the algorithm. Even though he finished 5th in wide receiver points, the fact that he was able to do some damage against some difficult defenses, the algorithm spit out that he was the number 1 receiver coming out of last year.
Yeah, 5th in points, 1st in your heart. So now, real quickly, as we get to 2015, what does the algorithm have in store for ODB?
So a lot of people are going to be overdrafting him, like you said, but let's take a look at his schedule. He has a very favorable schedule. He has the 4th easiest fantasy schedule of wide receivers this year. He has 5 best matchups and no worst matchups in 2015. Here's the front end of the schedule, and in the back end, his fantasy playoffs are tough. 14, 15, 16, bad matchup, but we saw last year that he still does work against those tough defenses. He has the 4th easiest schedule based on the algorithm for this year.
Well, and plus you have to figure the OBJ factor just kind of trumps a little bit too when you talk about some of those bad matchups.
Yeah, you just want him on your team because he can do some damage and do some highlight type catches.
Absolutely. So here you see the board. Now you can see more of this at NFL.com/fantasyomatic, but a ranking comparison, if you will. On the left side, it is the rankings based on the algorithm. You see Odell Beckham at number 1 versus the human factor, if you will. Our cadre of NFL.com fantasy experts has Beckham at the 6th spot in the lineup there. So it's like kind of man versus machine right now, isn't it?
And number 6 is nothing to slouch about. I mean, he's if you grab Odell Beckham Jr. and he's the number 6 receiver off the board, that's not a huge detriment. But the fact that the fantasyomatic algorithm has OBJ at number 1, there's no emotion going into this. It's just raw data where the algorithm doesn't care if he's going to get overdrafted or not. It's all data. It's hard numbers. They even have Mike Evans at number 8 there. So another guy that you don't might sleep on. The rest of your fantasy courts might be sleeping on Mike Evans. He's number 8, but Odell Beckham Jr. number 1 on the fantasy algorithm. So while some of the other guys in your league might be not buying the hype and kind of lying in the weeds a little bit, you can snatch up OBJ a little bit later and then know that you'll have the number 1 receiver headed in this year based on the OMatic algorithm.
That is not a bad thing to handle. Again, it's NFL.com/fantasyomatic. Come find us there. Get more of these advanced stats in the algorithm. In the meantime, happy drafting.